Hello and welcome. And I think today's topic is quite interesting. End corruption and people die. End corruption and people die. We've always had the rhetoric is that corruption is what's killing Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, and we hear all these damning statistics. Anyway, Dr. Raymond Atuguba, in delivering a lecture, said that somewhere in Nigeria, there were people who were saying, listen, the bureaucracy or the stopgaps that were being put in place to stop corruption was really hurting people. And he sort of agreed that, listen, if you're going to end corruption, then put certain social reforms in place so that people could fall back on. And coming to think about it, if you earn 7 cedis a day as your minimum wage, you have a wife and 2, 3 children, and you decide, look, I'm not going to be corrupt. That's all I'm going to earn, live on my 7 cedis a day. How do you survive on this side of the world? So is corruption going to kill us or is it going to survive us? Let's say you are a gate man, you're keeping the gate. You get somebody to park at a vantage point and take 5 cedis, or get somebody to park and take 2 cedis. So at least you can earn 18, 20 cedis a day to look after the family. But if you say, look, that's it, I earn 7 cedis a day and that's it. How do you survive? Hospital bills, school bills. We have lived our life in such a way that getting rid of corruption is getting rid of people. Again, there's this conflict of cultures where we pay money to facilitate, we pay money to say thank you, or let me say we give to facilitate, i.e. I'm a chief. I get to the palace every time and there's a little bottle of schnapp and an invitation to say, Nana, this is to say, come to the funeral. And you turn up at the funeral, and then there's a break to say, Nana, move to this location because we need to say thank you for coming to the funeral. Is there a conflict of cultures in how we live and how they live, and therefore maybe, we are being endowed with more corruption than usual? My name is Nana Sakwa IV, Akomodu Masahini, and your favorite TV host. When I come back, I'll introduce my guests who are going to debate this issue to find out where exactly we are with this corruption thing. Are we confused or are we on the right track? Don't move.
I just returned from Nigeria, and everybody in Nigeria is chanting, bring back corruption. You know why? Because address keeping the scope, structure, and success. The only way to avoid this is to find a social safety net for those who depend on corruption on the secondary and tertiary levels for survival, and implement that simultaneously with the crackdown on corruption. So on social media now, Buhari means brought unnecessary hardship among reasonable individuals. That's Buhari. The situation is really serious. We're laughing, but it is serious. So done unintelligently, the fight against corruption can bring a strong economy to its needs and to the IMF.
Well, that was, that's the basis of our conversation, to find out as to whether indeed if there is a point that we have lived for so long since independence, and all the ratings have said we are corrupt, and that's how people literally survive. And then if all of a sudden you get to work and, that extra income is just stifled. How do you survive? Let's just listen to that pitch again before I come to studio.
I just returned from Nigeria, and everybody in Nigeria is chanting, "Bring back corruption." You know why? Because addressing corruption without understanding the political economy of corruption is dangerous. Very, very dangerous. Buhari and those who guarded him on did a very, very suboptimal theorization of corruption in Nigeria. And the practical, down-to-earth of the critical role of corruption in keeping the scope, structure, and success of the Nigerian economy in the near term. If you eliminate corruption in Nigeria or Ghana today, many will starve. And in Nigeria, people are dying of starvation now. The only way to avoid this is to find a social safety net for those who depend on corruption on the secondary and tertiary levels for survival, and implement that simultaneously with the crackdown on corruption. So on social media now, Buhari means brought unnecessary hardship among reasonable individuals. That's Buhari. The situation is really serious. We're laughing, but it is serious. So done unintelligently, the fight against corruption can bring a strong economy to its knees and to the IMF.
With me in the studio, sat right next to me, is Linda Oforikwafu, Executive Director, Ghana Integrity Initiative. Linda, you're welcome.
Thank you.
And then I have Dr. Odro Osang, political economist, also in studio. Doctor, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Doctor, let me start with you. And I want to focus, since Ghana and Nigeria, are twin states, and whatever happens to them happens to us. Is he being a realist, and that we just love to deny the reality that, look, there are people who depend on handouts to survive, and without that, our economic structure won't support them? He's being a realist. It's something that, we just, we love to deny. And he's just come out plain to say, look, this thing is with us, and if you want to cut it, you might as well find other means of income.
Thank you very much, Nana. And I would disagree with Dr. Rimwa Tukuba that if you want to eliminate corruption in Ghana and Nigeria today, people will die. That I don't have that empirical evidence to suggest that people depend on corruption in Ghana. I don't know what is happening in Nigeria, but I can speak for Ghana. I know that in Ghana, we can have some level of corruption in the country, but to the extent that people would die if corruption is eliminated today suggests that we have legitimized corruption. I don't think
could
so.
die be metaphorical, that people may starve, or 3 meals to 2 or 2 meals to 1 meal a day?
Not at all. My personal view is that people know it is criminal. People do it undercover. People know that they hide to do it in Ghana. If you are caught, the laws will deal with you. Except that when it comes to political corruption, that is where we have the challenge. We may have some level of corruption in the system, but to say that if corruption is eliminated today, people will die.
Doc, you see, Doc, we have two types of corruption. That's where right. Maybe there's a 10-kilometer stretch of road that's 10 million, and then Minister A inflates it to 50 million. And that's the sort of corruption that we in Accra get angry about. But there's the corruption where you're going to get a photocopy done in our office, and it says, oh, master, for B2 paper also, and that's 5 CDs per photocopy, and well, it's 5 CDs. The other guy, 20 CDs, keep the change. And those ones we sort of gloss over. And if you put stringent methods where now you come in and you can just push a button and get the photocopy, so you don't need to give him that 5 CDs anymore, he's in trouble.
See, that is not so much prevalent in Ghana. I can say that it is happening. The average Ghanaian is generous. And that is the bit of our culture we need to work on. The average Ghanaian is generous. The average Ghanaian appreciates things. I can agree with you that you go to an office, you give somebody something to go and photocopy something for you, and once you decide to automate it, as it were, the person is out of business. That is not to say that that is what the person do for a living. What I think we can do as a country is to speak against it, is to find a way of getting people to ensure that they earn a living through the right ways or through the right means. I mean, we cannot compare Ghana to Nigeria when it comes to corruption. The evidence I have in Ghana suggests that the average Ghanaian appreciates things. There's the other side of it, corruption and culture. It is true that our culture can push certain people to undertake corrupt activities, but that is not to say corruption is deep-seated or deep-rooted in the Ghanaian society, such that if you eliminate it today, people will die. That I disagree.
Can we use the die metaphorically, rather than thinking that people will die, like, really get extinguished? But, generally, what he's probably implying is that, look, there are people who depend on this corruption to enable to keep the probably third and fourth child in school. They need that extra handout to survive, enable to, keep the wife doing his monthly regular health checks. He needs that extra other than his pay to survive. Linda, I mean,
Nana, thank you for the opportunity. I just like Dr. Osai disagreed with Dr. Tkuba. I also disagree with him. Unless you come back and explain to us the type or the nature of corruption he was talking about. I heard him talk about the secondary and tertiary beneficiaries would suffer and they would die. The kind of corruption you are describing, the 5 cities, 2 cities, petty corruption, does not cost the economy the amount and volumes that political corruption and the big gargantuan, the Woyome ones are causing us. No. And even for those ones, I don't know whether these big people are really giving monies out to very poor people in the communities, for which he can describe several as tertiary and secondary beneficiaries of the gargantuan types of corruption. But for the petty ones, we can do without it. As Dr. Saj rightly said, if somebody works with the public sector and closes at 4, 5, what else can he do with his time to earn more for himself? So those ones, if you eliminate, people will not die. If I go to the ministries or somewhere, somebody does the work for me and I just give the person 5 cedis, not because I want to bribe anybody. I'm not sure that's what Dr. Kutuwa was referring to. He was referring to the kind and the nature, the big type corruption, the grand corruption that Nigeria experiences, and for which we also have some in Ghana, but we cannot compare the two. If that is what he's referring to, I'm not sure we would need to put in place any safety nets before the big minister, the big MP engaging corruption will stop that practice. They would have saved enough.
Could that be the danger where, because bear in mind that 70% or more, fall within that 5 CD, 10 CD, 20, bracket.
Yes.
And we've sort of forgotten about all of them, and we are just, beeline for ministries. But I mean, the things happening in schools are equally dire, even though the numbers may not be that big. If you compare it to what happens in the school, it's terrible.
We launched a project recently, a report we called Corruption is Eating Us Up. If you look at that document, we all always perceive the police to be the most corrupt institution in the country. The police officer will take 2 cities, 5 cities. But when we did, talked about people's direct experiences with corruption, we got to know the people who work at the customs division of GRA. People who engage with them experience paying more monies to them than we do with the police. That's why I'm saying that the petty ones are known and seen all over the place. The corruption that hurts the economy is the gargantuan ones. Apart from that, when we do all our surveys, the poor people suffer the most. So I don't know how Dr. Tuguba wants us to believe the poor people rather benefit the most from corruption, because we know when people go to visit the doctor and they're asked to pay unapproved sums of money, when you're going to give birth, you're supposed to have free service and you're asked to pay money. These are the ones that hurt people the most. People actually suffer because the medicines are not in the hospital, because the roads have not been constructed, because we don't have school for their children. Those are the ones that affect the poor the most. So if he, I don't know, maybe he has some kind of research or evidence to show us. But even for Nigeria, I know people are not happy because Buhari has put in place some measures. I don't think Buhari has been able to eliminate corruption in Ghana. So we will take his presentation. I was in that meeting as well. It was in Gampa, so I was there. And so we could take his presentation as a picture that he was painting that could, but I don't think he has any empirical evidence that corruption has been eliminated in corruption in Nigeria, one, and two, whether people are really crying, bring corruption back. You might see some messages on Facebook, and I'm not sure if Nigerians will be happy with Dr. Kuba for the statement that he made. Yeah.
You don't believe he's been a realist? I think he's been a realist. That's the reality. It's just that we are all being politically correct.
The realism must be backed by evidence. This is a political economic statement. It can have a way of hurting both the Ghanaian economy and the Nigerian economy. So I would expect that the academician, as he is, he should have backed it, or if he has it, he should bring the empirical evidence. It's very important because it is good to make qualitative statement. It is good to make statement based on assumptions. Assumptions can be rebutted, but then such statements are very expensive. In fact, when I first heard it, I asked myself whether there are empirical basis, whether we have any research to support that. In fact, if we were to have any research to support that, I would take it up and do advocacy around it. Because it's something that would then be eating up the society. And we need to talk about it to free the society so that we can have a better society to live in. Because if you have people getting away with their ill-gotten wealth and priding themselves with it, they should not have a space in society. We have the youth coming up. We want a new Ghana. We want a Ghana that we'll be proud of. So we don't want a Ghana that is saturated with corruption. Not at all. That's not what we are looking for. So if the empirical evidence are there are people who want to speak against it. And we have a government that is saying that they are going to come up with a special prosecutor that will prosecute people who commit offenses, political offenses and all of that. So we want to see that happening. So if the empirical evidence are there, why not? They should make them available. We take it up, do advocacy, and ensure that we can effect some positive change in the economy.
See, Linda, even though the 30% or even the 5% at the hierarchy of corruption who are taking the billions and the billions, the ones at the bottom who are taking this one CD that we are ignoring are stealing time, are stealing process, are stealing procedure, are stealing effectiveness, and they're grinding, the whole nation, or they're slowing us down.
But do you blame them? Breakdown of control, lack of supervision. People who have been paid to supervise these people are not paying them. People who are supposed to sanction these people who are not supervising are not sanctioned.
Teachers are pounding
Teachers are pounding people. No, if you allow the institutions and the systems to work and we crack the whip and we apply the sanctions, it will serve as a deterrent to others. Let us not be afraid to crack the whip. Let us not be afraid to say that this and this and this are not what society stands for. It is very important.
But those are the people, if you crack the whip, they're going to, lose a meal. They'll lose a meal.
Nana, I'm not sure we said we are ignoring the one city, the two cities. But what I was saying is that I'm not sure Dr. Tugba was referring to those ones. That's why I want him to come again, because my understanding of tertiary and secondary beneficiaries would necessarily be people up there taking a pig and make sure the families, the members in the villages and are well settled and all that. That's what, if that's what he's talking about, then maybe he can come again. I also believe in this empirical evidence that Dr. Sai made reference to. Yesterday I was in a meeting at Kodeo meeting, we're there together, and every day we make reference to if we fund political parties and one of the means or sure means of reducing corruption. And I was very happy when a learned professor said that I hold the opinion that that will not bring down corruption that politicians engage or parties engage in. There's no way it's going to. And I was very happy that there's no, so far, all the time that he spent doing, it's a professor actually said that he's yet to see the empirical evidence. So some of the things that we say, as you rightly said, if there is any information, we would love to do advocacy with. But I'm not sure Doctor has any for now. Maybe he has, maybe he's here to share with us, but I'm not sure. I still believe that what he presented at that forum also suggests that we should stop anti-corruption work for some time until we have been able to put in place safety nets for beneficiaries of corruption. Is that what he's trying to tell us?
That was literally my next question to you, Linda, is how much corruption is in sub-Saharan Africa? Looking at who we are, like how Doc says, look, we are very giving, we always love to say thank you, sometimes thank you even before we ask for whatever it is you're going to do. So when these corruption perception index come out, I mean, how much of that is an actual corruption and how much of that is because of a conflict of who we are?
When we do the surveys and we launch the reports, we can tell you that the perception is very close to reality. And so there is no big gap, so much difference between the perception and the reality. The only thing I mentioned earlier on was when we did it, people's direct experiences and the perception. We had the police now coming forth also with the other ones. But you understand, people who go to the customs to do business with them, I'm going to get my goods cleared and all those ones. There is the likelihood, more likelihood to pay and also to pay even more. But if I have to give a policeman some 5 cedis, 10 cedis on the road, if you don't know what your rights are, I wouldn't. So in that case, not everybody is more or less forced, or you are kept in some corner sort of, so you don't have any other choice than to pay. That's what happens when you deal with the customs and all those ones. And so I still believe that I don't agree with Dr. Tukuba because we can't wait for him. We can't wait to put in place these safety nets before we can deal with corruption. The doctor made reference to the vision of the new administration to crack down on corruption. I'm sure that's one of the grounds on which most people might have voted for them. And you know Ghanaians and how well we do with if governments are not able to keep their promises, how we send them back home in 4 years' time. So we believe and hoping that the current administration would not be unwilling to work based on Dr. Tukube's statements, but they will continue their effort to help minimize the canker, because those who voted for them on the back of corruption are also watching and hoping to see we can see some changes. But I still believe that we should be able, the poor suffer the most when there's corruption in the system than the benefits. So I don't agree.
Because I worked in the car industry in the UK for a long time. Now, if Linda comes to buy a car from me, when I'll be talking, you want a 206, we're going through the deal, we'll talk, and then she just happened to say, my neighbor told me to come here, Mr. Odrosa. Really? Give me his name and number. Immediately, we send you a £50 check just for introducing a customer to say thank you. And it's above board. That's right. As soon as a customer hints, and so there were people who actually went out of their way to make sure you go to this dealership and tell them I sent you, and then we send them, that check. So for them, it's accepted. It won't be corruption. Should we now come and also identify certain things which are above board? Because we seem that anything that didn't come out of your monthly check is, that must be corruption. He got this or he got that. And so maybe we are just, we now believe that everybody is corrupt. And it's like corrupt. Maybe we should redefine it.
Yeah, maybe we should redefine it. Maybe we should look at it again vis-a-vis our culture. Because naturally, Ghanaians, we are very appreciative of things. And the part of the country I come from, even when excuse me to say you insult us, we'll thank you. We will thank you because we believe in appreciating things. So if somebody appreciates somebody, it doesn't mean the person is trying to corrupt the person. There are circumstantial differences. There are jurisdictional differences. Unfortunately for us, we have an international minimum standard we are using, which is different from what we know. And I think if we want to localize some of these things, we should localize it, taking into consideration our peculiar circumstances. Because if you go to church and on a Sunday you donate a shirt to your pastor or to your church leader, are you trying to corrupt the pastor? That is not it. It is a sign of appreciation. In fact, in certain churches, I know they have appreciation day where they go to appreciate the leadership of the church. Do you call it corruption? You know, so I think it's about time we try to localize some of these things, redefine it to suit our circumstances, our culture, and our context. It's very important we do that. So we don't see certain things that are part of our culture that does not suggest or that is not given out with the intent of corrupting somebody to be interpreted as corruption. That is not the case. The white-collar corruption people see, people talk about, is not the same corruption we see here. Look at the classic example you gave. If it were to happen in Ghana, people would interpret it as what? Being corrupt. You are corrupting the person. But that is not the case. So I think we should look at our circumstances. We should rather focus on the big, big ones. The millions, the billions, those who go to create their wealth and do all kinds of illegal activities to make money, yet they come out and then flex and use the resource or the wealth to oppress the average Ghanaian. Those are the things we should be talking about. These ones are the normal ones. They are not corrupt activities. You go to DVLA and people do all kinds of things. Those are the people we should check. You go to the passport office. They do all kinds of things. These are the people we should check. I mean, you go to other ministries, departments, and agencies. Before they even move your file, you have to put an envelope on it. These are the kinds of things we need to check. Not the poor gentleman who works in the photocopier office. He's going to do the photocopier for you after 5. He's brought a change of 5 Ghana, and you give it back to the person, and somebody say you are trying to corrupt the person. That is a no-no.
Linda, you are nodding in an agreement.
Yes, I like the bit about trying to, if I can use the word, domesticate the definition of corruption to suit.
Because now you guys are really hunting us.
No, we don't do that. If you really follow us, we don't do that. I like that bit. Also, if you look at the United Nations Convention Against Corruption, the global convention did not define corruption. It asked every nation to actually look internally. Corruption is a crime. So what constitutes a crime in your country, and then you define it based on that, because you can't have the same definition for corruption around the globe.
Linda, I mean,
so we talk about corruption being abuse of an entrusted power for private gain. If a pastor does something, I appreciate the pastor. How can I call that corruption? Abuse of entrusted power. What power has been abused and by who? And do you understand? So we doing the anti-corruption work. We don't define corruption the way other people might be defining corruption.
Let me give you an example. I mean, now, the road to Edumasa, my little republic, was a hostile terrain.
Okay.
Literally hostile terrain. So one day I walked into Ines Fuseni's office with pictures. Because I'd done everything. Yeah. Showed him the pictures. Said, Nana, this road is terrible. Yeah. He calls highways, he calls this in front of me. Does everything to try and see if he can get anybody to help me. Eventually he gets a contractor to come on the road. So if I had nothing to say thank you other than verbal thank you, and I've said thank you on air and everything. I mean, what do we do? Is it wrong if the village says, look, there's a sheep, thank you very much for what you did for us, or look, you're being paid to do the job, you've done your job, get on with it.
That's the part of our culture that we cannot do away with. For me, being the head of Ghana Integrity Initiative, there is no way I can describe what you just described as corruption. It was after the service or the help has been delivered. So, Minister, people of Edumasa say, thank you with this sheep. What is wrong with that? If the person is providing a public service and is working in an organization like Shraj, where he's supposed to be sitting on cases and settling matters, the person or the institution's code of conduct wouldn't allow him to come to Shraj and then offer a bag of rice, a sheep and goats, because there is the likelihood that that case can be reopened or another matter related to that to come up. The moment it happens, then you are like, you have taken a gift from that individual, and you don't know, you are compromised to provide a service that the person might not, or even give a judgment that the person is not. So those institutions, they put in place mechanisms to prevent such conflicts of interest from happening. Other than that, if you go and give a chief, we GI can go to a chief's place without giving anything, maybe because of where we are coming from. We are here to visit you. Yes, but then I don't think we can put everything together and describe. The moment you can't actually find the elements of abusing and trusted power for private gain, we shouldn't describe such things as corruption.
Doc, if corruption is hurting us so much and is being perpetrated by, the few at the top, why haven't the large, bottom of the triangle gotten angry to say, listen, enough of this? But we still worship and glorify them.
It's a societal issue. It's our culture. And that is why people are speaking against it now. And it is all about awareness raising and then raising people's consciousness. People have not come to the realization that some of the corrupt monies people get from corrupt activities are reinvested in their own lives to suggest that they are doing them favors. And once you have this awareness, people can speak against it. In time past, people don't question the source of your wealth. In time past, you are in a society and you buy a new vehicle every month, every 2 months, nobody cares. But today, you can't do that in Ghana. You do that and you get people start talking about it. They will start, they want to know the source of your wealth. Now, churches, imams, Muslims, they are all awakened. If you are in a church and you are all of a sudden, you start showing off a certain source of wealth, if you are not very careful, your pastor or some of the leadership may call you and ask you questions. That is the level at which we are. In the previous past, nobody will ask you questions. But now, there is a wake-up call, thanks to the work of GII and other advocacy institutions. And that is why all of us will have to speak against it. It is not good, and I want to believe that if we are able to do something to our programs, especially the curriculum of our children from primary to JHS to even the university, the first year, you do the effect of corruption or corruption and its impact on development. If all of us do that, by the time we come out of the university, we'll know that corruption is indeed a canker that is affecting us. And if the present government resolve to move it from a misdemeanor to a felony, it will really help. And they enforce it. My challenge has always been with the enforcement. If we enforce it and we crack the whip and we set people as scapegoats, it will send a deterrent signal to all others.
Linda, in your last survey you did, I think there was a huge chunk, 80–90%, who didn't think facilitation, was wrong, and people have come to accept it. Should we probably now raise, maybe add certain things to our understanding and, move along with it rather than try to bring them all back to the 2% who think is wrong?
Is I am sure the masses have not appreciated the impact of the cost of corruption to our society and to our development. So they still feel that as in Accra, corruption actually staying in Accra and stay with some big people in Accra. They don't even see the happenings in their district assemblies and the MC, the municipal assemblies as anything that is of any big or negative impact to them. We are doing some public education. Under the NACAP, public education is very key and plays a very important role in the fight against corruption. So gradually, people will tend to appreciate the costs and the impact of corruption on their lives and development as a whole. So you don't see most people rising. My former boss will tell you that it's a survival issue. Some people are hungry. So the first thing that they think about in the morning is not Ghana Integrity Initiative is in my community to organize a workshop. They are thinking about what they will eat when they come for that program. So people are actually thinking of surviving. And corruption is not, they're not thinking about it. But then when you make them appreciate, we are doing a project under USAID called trying to look at the cost and impact of corruption in education and health. And after that, we do public awareness on the findings. So people get to appreciate that if I'm asked to pay 2 cedis, 3 cedis, 100 Ghana cedis, 1.5 million before I can secure admission for my child to a school, This is how it affects me as an individual, and that is how come I should rise, report corruption, and also abstain from engaging in acts. People still do not appreciate how corruption affects them. I'm sure your road not even being constructed might be on budgets in the past. It never got done because the minister or someone, some way, somehow prevented it from happening, or because you actually either because he had entrusted power, he was able to move it to benefit another community or his community some way, somehow. And that would be a cost of corruption that is normal, ordinary citizen would not appreciate and understand. So until they get to that level, and after they have gotten enough to eat, then they can have the energy and say, Ghana Integrity Initiative, I just experienced corruption, this and that. Until they do that, we will still be having problem of getting the masses to support our efforts. But we are doing well now. People talk about it as if you realize during the election time, abuse of incumbency and vote buying, people were reporting and talking about it because they are beginning to appreciate that it has negative effect on our elections. We'll get there. It's gradual, but we will get there.
Professor, as soon as you say corruption, the first thing that comes in your subconscious is that politician. As soon as the word corruption is mentioned, the first thing that comes is politician before you start moving around the societal to find out could it be somebody else. Could that also be a danger where we are, looking,
in the wrong direction?
In the wrong direction. Civil servants, I keep saying schools, the school budgets. It's amazing what they're doing in school budgets. But we're not looking there. We're just looking at, ministries. Could that also be what's making corruption thrive? Just policing just one aspect of society?
Definitely. No, I'd want to agree with you because it looks as if many of us are keeping an eye and talking about politicians, excuse me to say, being corrupt. But then I can tell you that when the politicians come, it is the technical officers, the directors in the ministries, departments, and agencies, some of them, they show them the way. They show them the way. Politicians will come, they are novice, they come into the ministries, they don't understand the issues in that particular ministry. You have this technical officer there who is very experienced. He's been working all over his life, 20 years experience. He's going through audits from one audit to the other. So they are the people who would guide them. Now, in certain cases, today in our session, somebody mentioned something that, look, before a politician earns 5,000, the technical officer would have earned 50,000. Why? Because the politician may want the technical officer to protect them. They are the people preparing the books of accounts. They are the people who go to public accounts to answer questions and all of that. So I think we have over-concentrated on the politicians. It is about time we turn our attention to the technical officers, the civil servants, the public servants, the local government servants, and then deal with them. Because audits are conducted year in, year out. Audit reports are issued. Management letters are issued. They will appear before Public Accounts Committee. All we hear is that, Honorable Chair, next year you will not see this happening. We'll go and then put in place the required mechanisms or resolve the issue. That is all. Is that what we want to hear? That is not what we want to hear. We want to see people being sanctioned, people being made to refund the money so that we can use it to finance other development projects out there. So I agree with you. We have over-concentrated on the politicians. Let us look at the other side of the coin. And then let us also look at the procurement value chain. Because the procurement value chain is another area of big corrupt activities that are going on. Because the person goes in there and he feels that I have to pay my way out to be able to get this job. So because of that, he adds it to the cost of the service. And because he's worked his way out, for some reason, he will get the job. After getting the job, he'll have to go back there and then pay. As if that is not enough. Instead of him doing the work up to the quality standards required, because he's paid so much to somebody, it affects the quality of the job. At the end of the day, it's the average Ghanaian that suffers. So I think it's about time as a nation we do a serious or a very good diagnosis. Let us establish the parameters, let us establish the actors and the institutions involved, and let us develop a holistic approach. And that is why the NACAP is very important. I'm sure the NACAP is going to deal with it, but it should not over-focus on the politicians. The politicians will come and go, but let us deal with the permanent government. The permanent government are the civil servants, the local government servants, who are there making the money. They're showing the politicians the way to be able to undertake their corrupt activities. It is sad. It is very, very sad. Some politicians, some technical officers or chief directors or directors in ministry, departments, and agencies are richer than politicians.
Linda, why are we so obsessed about politicians?
Because we see them from day one. They engage in primaries. They buy votes at that level. It gets election time, they buy votes. They stand on platforms and promise heaven. So the ordinary Ghanaian sees the politician as the one who's always engaged in such acts. About 70% of state resources goes into procurement. The person in my village or my mother or my grandmother would never get to know is the directors at the ministries who are doing the procurement, filling the forms, doing the whatever. And that is where the big sums of money gets lost. So we have to tackle.
But you see, we in the media, maybe grandma in the village may not know. All they know is that, look, the minister is the figurehead. But even us in the media, in the forefront, still ignore these procurement directors and still go in
because you want to make the news. Do you remember, Nana, when Woyome's incidents came up? So many names came up. When it goes to investigating, all those names they just got disappeared, or I don't know whether they were erased. Those who raised the checks, those through whose account monies were paid, those who got the kickback, it all just disappeared. And Woyome was the only one we were going after. From day one, we knew we were going to lose that case in court if we go the way we went, and we did it, and we lost. So I don't know why we over-concentrate on the politician. As I said, I believe it's because of the processes through which they themselves they come to power. We perceive them to be corrupt. But when it comes to what the big men do in the department, ministries, and we never get to see, so we don't know. But those who also know, you want to make the news. So it is more newsworthy to
get a star man
than to get a person, Mr. something something in the ministry who is really making the money.
And they always PROs, they always speak for the ministry. You never hear the PROs of the ministry speak. They always answer everything. So probably they make the better news for us. But Linda, is there hope that we can reduce?
Oh, there is hope. I am very confident we will get there. You realize when Dr. Tuguba talked about if you don't understand the political economy of corruption, I don't know whether he was talking about political economy in reference to only Ghana or all over the world. Danida has a political economy that we can talk about. US does, everybody does. How come they have been able to reduce the canker? Is it that they understood the political economy of corruption earlier, and so they put in place safety net to prevent it from happening? They didn't do that. They put in place laws to deal with corruption, and they put in place officers and institutions to enforce the laws. We have put in place the laws. The laws have potholes, big holes, and we are still sitting there not even implementing the bad laws. That is where our problem is. The moment we get a leader who is committed to the fight against corruption, we will get some results. When I talk about leadership, I'm not talking about only the presidency or the president or whatever. I'm talking about institutional leaders, the new appointments, those who are taking office should be people who are committed to the fight against corruption. Otherwise, we come back to square one.
How are they going to fund and pay the campaigns? You know, the campaign costs money. They've been campaigning for 8 years. You're not going to plug holes, Dr. Zain?
Nana, you've been campaigning. You took the risk to campaign. You are there to serve, not to be served.
Christmas.
No, it is not for that Christmas, but this is also not a popularity contest. It is a management role. You are managing resources, and you are expected to manage it to the benefit of the average Ghanaian. So I want to agree with Linda that, look, this new appointee, this new government is expected to show the way. They campaign along those lines, and we are expecting the leadership to show the way. And as she rightly said, it's not only the president. Every minister, every deputy minister, every district chief executive, every coordinating director, every regional coordinating director, every chief director, make sure that in your own small corner, you say to yourself, I'll do that which is right, I will make sure I will use the national resources wisely. There will be value for money. I will make sure that I will sanction people who undertake corrupt activities. And I'm sure if we are able to do that, cumulatively, we'll be able to reduce corrupt activities.
You know, the Kumasi Serial Callers Association, you know, jumping up and down, say, hey, it's been 3 months, we haven't gotten our share yet. I mean, fine, they're not saying be corrupt or anything, but these are some of the pressures where you can't just start plugging holes. You need to open some holes and find them ports and harbors and somewhere and place your people to, you know, keep them quiet. And these are the things that, you know, maybe the place can only staff 9, but well, let's just put 11 there. It won't break the bank.
It means the institutions and the systems are not working. If the institutions and the systems are working, you will never employ 12 people in an area that requires 9 people. In that case, you are bloating the compensation budget of government. That on its own should be enough grounds for you to be fired. You can't do that. Let us allow the institutions and the systems to work. Let people know that there are rules in this country. And that is where I want the president to put his foot down. If any of his ministers messes up, creates an impression to suggest that the government is not going to crack the whip, he should crack the whip. He should sacrifice them for Ghanaians to know that he means business.
Linda, GI, will you give any laxity? Let's say if you know, 8 is the deadline. I mean, would you give us up to 10 to say, okay, well, we'll allow you a little room here to move, or it's absolute no?
No.
Let's say, okay, let's say the road is 10 million. We say, okay, well, you inflate it by 11 or 12, but not 22.
The word inflation itself is criminal. And I don't you can have contingency. You can have a contingency budget, but you shouldn't inflate it. You shouldn't inflate it.
It's a no-no.
No.
Yes, it is a no-no. And as doctor said, we expect so much.
Because the general idea is that we expect some inflation, but not too much.
You shouldn't even introduce it. In accounting, they call something immaterial fraud can lead to the discovery of material fraud. Why do you encourage the person to add 1 million under this project? The next time he's going to add 2 million. The next time 3 million. By that, you are gradually institutionalizing the concept of addition in the process. You shouldn't just introduce it. Send a signal that you detest it. It is something that you frown upon. It is alien in your dictionary. You don't encourage it.
Nana, I want to add something to what Doctor said. You realize that we heard Nana Akufo-Addo campaigning and saying that, and even I think after the campaign, when he became the president, he said, public office is not a place for any of my people to get wealth. If you want to be rich, go to the private sector and go make your own money. And the media interviewed me and they asked, do I think the president actually is going to do what he said? I said, yes. I hope and only pray the president will be able to do that. Because for now, he's admonishing his people. But when it gets to the time for him to put his foot down, that if a minister does A, B, C, D, which is wrong, you go home. That is when Ghanaians will now know that the man is a man who stands by his words.
They've just issued a memo that no new cars until it's absolutely necessary. Is it in the right direction?
I also heard some cars were bought before this one. But if even some cars were bought and this directive has come, we are hoping they will implement same. In the past, we heard that no minister will be flying by first class. I don't know whether the media ever did any monitoring to know whether after that, no minister really did. So policies and rules, Ghana, 100%. Implementation that brings the change is what we always feel. And I'm hoping the new administration, Ghanaians, we are awake. GI is awake. We are awake and we will monitor to see you go, make sure you enforce the laws and the rules that we have in place.
Gradual or straight down to zero?
Straight down to zero, Nana. There's nothing like if or but or gradual. I mean, straight down to the road. Yeah. Implement it as it is. If you said they should not procure new vehicles, you have given the directives, and you get to know that a ministry has procured a new vehicle, fire the minister. That's all.
Even your own party people will kick you out.
Let them kick you. I want to see a president who will come to power and say that I'll do the right thing and rule for 4 years. That you have laid the foundation, others will come and continue.
But the painful bit is the guy who comes after you would rubbish all the good things, all your good principles, and go back. So the thing is, so
you have set the standards. You've
yeah.
made your name. Development is a process, it's not an activity. The value addition, what you do during your tenure, matters most. We are on a learning curve. And once you get the opportunity to manage the country for the next 4 years, make sure you put in place good system so that people will continue to mention your name. If you leave and somebody decide to reduce the standards or destroy the standards you set, that's another matter. But if we have good systems, we have the institutions and the laws working, it will be extremely difficult for any new person to come and destroy the standards you set.
Wasn't that a beautiful, beautiful conversation? And wouldn't it Ghana be just that one beautiful place that we all have to live with? Because indeed, if everybody decided to live on the straight and narrow, everyone will be able to afford to live. Those even on 7 cedis a day will go to the hospital, and if it's free, it will be free, and therefore you have your 7 cedis to do other things. And but I think even those at the top will need the support of you and I, so that when they crack the whip, we sit back and say, yes, it's fair and square. But every time we are blackmailing our politicians, well, 4 years is around the corner. Don't dig galam say 4 years is around the corner, then we live in the same thing. So you and I would have to definitely be on this crusade and say, look, let's say no to corruption. And I like that. Why do you have to introduce inflation? I like that. Thank you very much for watching. Let me take this opportunity to invite you to the Republic of Edumasa on the 15th of April, is our Easter, and the Presby Church is 100 years old, centenary Presby Church. So you should all come and join in the celebration. Reverend Seth Jukum will be waiting for you. But thank you, Linda, and thank you, Dr. Sang. It's been an education.
Thank you. It's my birthday on the 15th, so I'll be around Akusumu. So
hey, you have to be there. You have to be there. Thank you.